Coming up on today's episode of Career Path, we sit down with a communication department alum turned Fox News reporter. Stay with us. Welcome to Career Path, a show that brings back alumni to share their success stories. On tonight's episode, we sit down with Tom Fitzgerald, a news reporter at Fox Television WTTG in Washington. Let's take a look.
But it turns out all of those things you leave behind, the stuff that you never thought you were going to see again, well, it doesn't disappear into thin air. It goes to a special place, a place called Lost and Found.
Tom, so glad you could come. Welcome back to campus.
Great to be back. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we'll talk about Fox a little bit later in the program, but right now let's start right at the beginning. How'd you get to Willie P?
When I was in high school, I knew what I wanted to do. I didn't know where I wanted to do it. I had a huge advantage in wanting a career in television news, and that was my older sister, Gina. She was 10 years older than me, and she worked at WJLA Television in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
So I did have a little bit of advanced scout on what you needed to do in order to work in the business. And one of the things my sister always told me that you needed to do was get yourself in a place that had a good television department, and also a place that was physically close to places where you could do internships.
A happy medium.
A happy medium, because you need to not only learn how to become a broadcaster, you also need to start setting up ways to network yourself.
Of course.
So that once you're ready to graduate, you're also ready to work.
So what led you gravitate towards communication specifically? Was math just not your thing like the rest of us?
Math was not my thing like the rest of us. That is a badge of honor of all people in communications. As a result, I am now tasked sometimes with doing news reports about budgets that incorporate billions and billions of dollars.
Okay.
So that will come back to haunt you. And also trying to do my daughter's math homework now in the 3rd grade also has become a problem. But in all seriousness, though, I always gravitated towards areas of schoolwork that involved talking and communicating.
Okay.
Whether it was a history project, whether it was a book report that
You
I
always found that element.
Yeah. I knew that maybe academically I was not maybe up to speed with some of my contemporaries, but where I could excel was I could take those same ideas and communicate them in a pretty, I knew I could do that.
Right.
I knew I could do that, and that was one thing that I really did feel that when I was in that element, that I was a fish in water. And when it came time to find a college, I wanted to find a place where I could swim.
Okay. Excellent. So the show that's being taped right now, all the crew positions are actually filled by students. Now, back in your time, there wasn't really a TV club, yet you and your classmates found yourselves still doing productions.
Yeah,
Tell us about that.
It was more like a gang than a club. It was like a TV gang. We had a fantastic faculty, as you do now, and what they allowed us to do was basically be inventive, be creative, and to give us a blank slate and to draw on that slate. Mike McCunney, a classmate of mine, got the idea that we should use all the things that we had here and do a news show.
Okay.
So Mike created what became WPC TV Newsline. And that started out as a 15-minute newscast. Then it became a half-an-hour newscast. And it had to be on the air every night at 6 o'clock.
Now, speaking of Newsline, we actually have some footage from that. Do you recognize yourself in any of this here?
No, you don't. You don't have that, do you? Oh, my goodness, you do. Dan Cleary. Yeah.
Taking down memory lane here.
Wow. Yeah, this was one of our special shows. This was the Spring Fest. That's a typewriter, kids. And, I remember all these people. That's such great memories. We would go out. We would steal stories out of the newspaper. We would try to, as best we could in our primitive caveman ways, reflect what was going on the campus and put it into these news shows. And we were blessed with some parking tickets. That was a story we all did. We were blessed with some people like former professor here, Herb Jackson,
Okay.
John Catapano, Dan Cleary, John Kiernan, all of these names that pass through these halls, people that would take us aside and say, hey, that was good, you did a good job on that. You know what, on that one, you went a little over the line there, over here, try this. It was very creative.
And you're still getting the feedback as well.
Yeah, yeah, and what was great about it was that, we didn't really know what we were doing, but, and I tell all of you here, being in New Jersey, you are all born broadcasters, because just living in this state, you need to be able to tell people what you're thinking at all times and talk to them. So, we were able to kind of build on what we all kind of intrinsically had, and we were all great friends. And that, was our community. A lot of us did not belong to the fraternal organizations because we spent so much time with each other that we never got around to doing that, even though they're great folks and great friends of ours to this day, but we're still in touch.
And you talk about the camaraderie. Now, you probably know this as comm students, we find ourselves sometimes living in this building.
Yeah.
And you're a Twitter man yourself, I believe.
Right.
So you're probably well aware of our hashtag Team Hobart. Team Hobart is kind of what encompasses the camaraderie around here. Tell us about the camaraderie when you were a student.
Well, very similar to what you just said. A lot of us lived in Heritage Hall. So we would have meetings in people's kitchens. We would plan out shows. The one clip you had there was of Springfest.
Okay.
I have a distinct memory of being in Pioneer Hall and us thinking up that entire week. There was an actress from a television show named Kate Alley who was going to be on campus, and that was a big deal, even though I can't remember her name right now. And we had a host from MTV when they had VJs, and there was a band, Living Color, that was going to be here on campus that week. And we tried to think up, how can we do all of the events and also take part in them as well. And it was really a team effort. Mike McCunney, my dear friend, I don't think he ever appeared on camera unless somebody snuck up behind him and got a shot of him. And you probably have video of that too if you've had that thing. But not everybody wanted to be on camera. I wasn't on camera for a long time. I was mainly a cameraman with a really, really bad 80s mullet. We
don't have anything of that.
Thank God you don't have that. But most of my work for a long period of time here at William Patterson was behind the camera. And I did start here. This was the place, not far from where we're sitting right now, where I did start to do on-camera work. And it was because I felt so comfortable around my friends that any of that unease or any of that nervousness that you might normally get if you're not somebody who has done broadcasting before went away, because I was in an environment that was inclusive. I was amongst friends. I was amongst professors and teachers and student assistants that encouraged us to feel comfortable, and it was just such a blessing.
Okay, let's change gear here. Let's talk about internships. Currently, William Patterson puts a great emphasis, especially on communication majors, to go out and seek those internships. I have one right now. What was it like for you with internships, and what was the stigma and the feelings for that?
I went through a couple of different internships, and I learned so much from all of them. The experience here at the university is so important, but it is also so finite. While you're in it, you do feel sometimes like it's going to go on forever, but there is a different speed outside of academic work than there is professionally. So what it allowed me to do was William Patterson taught me the tools. My internships kind of showed me how I could apply those to the different things I wanted to do. I've used a sports analogy of a batting cage, and I think you really need to get out there and insert yourself in other types of environments, building on what you've learned here, but networking, because the more people you meet, the more Twitter accounts, you connect with people and talk to them and chat with them. You really start to develop a relationship with people, and that can turn into jobs.
Absolutely.
Because ultimately, that's why we're all here.
And as a sports fan, I totally agree and enjoy the analogy. We're going to take a short break. Coming up, we'll get some advice on what big companies like Fox News want to see in their interns. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Career Path. We're speaking with WP Communication Department alum, now Fox News reporter, Tom Fitzgerald. So Tom, let's change gears here. Let's talk about your work now and how Willie P prepared you for your work.
Well, my work now is at WTTG Television. It's a Fox station, one of the flagship stations in Washington, D.C. I cover national affairs and local news as well. I also do some in-studio anchoring and hosting as well, too, on occasion. The main template that I basically deal with every day is I kind of move around. One day I'll be working at the White House. One day I'll be up on Capitol Hill. I'll cover cases up at the U.S. Supreme Court. But there is also a good body of local news that will occur.
So you're a busy man. Breaking
news. Yeah, it's not a job that keeps you in one chair for long periods of time. And that's what I love about it. There's always something different, and especially in Washington, D.C., you get this great mix of big national stories, but also important local news as well. And as a local television station in Washington, you have to be both, because the White House and the Capitol and the Supreme Court are all located in the city, and the people of that city need to have their news as well, too.
So let's have you give some advice to broadcast journalism majors specifically. How could they be preparing for their jobs in the industry? The industry is a little bit different than you first went into it, but there are also some elements that remain the same. What would you say?
Back when I started in the 50s, it's very different. It's different now than it was a year ago. And I mean that we just recently did an experiment at our newscast doing an all Periscope show.
Really?
Didn't exist a year ago.
Okay.
So it's changing as we speak. What I would tell students here at William Patterson, preparing for their careers, is to start now. And if you haven't already started, start thinking about that, because you don't want to put yourself in a situation. I don't think most students are like this anyway. Nobody's waiting
for the last minute.
Nobody's waiting for commencement day to start thinking about this stuff. I don't think so anyway. But getting out and doing those internships, doing as much work in different areas as you can, making yourself as eclectic as possible. I just recently had a conversation with my news director, and he said to me, he says, one of the things I always tell people now these days is you got to be able to do everything. Got to be able to do a little bit of everything. So you've got to be able to do a hard news story, but you've also got to be able to do a feature. You might be called on to do something about a sports story, like the Ray Rice story I covered last year. So you need to know a little bit about a lot of stuff, and present yourself to an employer as a multifaceted person, and a multi-platform broadcaster, because that's what the business is these days. I'm a television guy. I love television, but I spend a lot of time on Twitter. I spend a lot of time on Facebook, Periscope, Snapchat.
And you got to be familiar with all those platforms as well.
It's all part of the job now, and it's not just television and these newscasts that come on at certain points of the day.
Okay, so what would you say to students who think that, there's no jobs in the media industry or in the TV industry? What would you say to them?
I would dissuade them of that idea. There are That's jobs
good here.
up there. Yeah. No, there are jobs up there. They're different jobs, though. There was a time in this business where when you graduated, you had to go out to Kansas and work your way up through progressively larger television markets to get back to an area like this in New Jersey. In Wayne, New Jersey, you're in the #1 television market in the country. So in that respect, it's a little tough. But at the same time, you've got all different types of media platforms out there these days. I have people I know that have law firms and employ entire units in their law firm. They do nothing but media. And these are communication students that are working at law firms. So I would say, actually, there's more opportunity for work out there. However, the skill set is broader as well too. So you need to make yourself as versed as many different kinds of media as you can.
Okay, thank you very much, Tom. That's it for this edition of Career Path. If you haven't already, don't forget to connect with us on social media at WP Comm Department on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and use the hashtag Team Hobart. For all of us here at WPTV, I'm Mason Mills. See you next time.